So we're gonna start it off with the 2JZ, 1JZ motors. You got the GE, the GTE, basically non-turbo and turbo variants. 1JZ came before the 2JZ. It's 2.5 liter and then a 3 liter. Similar to the RB motors, you can kind of combine top and bottom ends, make a 1.5 JZ, but I look at these as really the Japanese LS, especially in Japan, and even now in the US, they're becoming like that where you can find them everywhere. There's so many people that tune them, so many parts being built for them. They're absolute workhorses. They do have an iron block. These things can take 600-700 horsepower easily. And then you can build them up, and obviously people have taken them to numbers that are almost unbelievable. These motors are just absolute great platform. It's something you can get. They fit in most chassis, which is also great, which most of these motors do. That's why they're on the list. But really a JZ, I think, has to be on anyone's top list for top drifting motors. The JZ is an inline 6 variant, usually turboed. I know some people do run them NA, but to get the best power out of them, you're gonna wanna go turbo. Sometimes twin, but for drifting, usually most people are going on a top mount single turbo setup, and you just kinda, depending on the build, depending if you up the literage or what you do to the heads, kind of will determine the size of your turbo and how much lag you're gonna get. But these motors are a no-brainer for anyone's top drifting motor list. I think it's only natural in this list that we would, right after the JZ, go with the RB. Potentially my #1 favorite motor for drifting. RBs came in anywhere from 2 to 3 liters. You have a RB20 DE, which is a 2 liter non-turbo, RB20 DET, which is your turbo. Then you have the RB25, which came in a non-turbo, a turbo, and then a Neo. I feel like a lot of people don't use those motors, but look at the Neo. That is an awesome RB motor. It has a lot of newer tech in it. Those were the ones that came in the R34 Skylines that weren't RB26. There were other motors that came in there as well, but they share a lot of the same internals with the RB26, and they actually have a superior head to the RB26. And then obviously, the RB26 DETT. So that's the twin turbo, the very famous motor that came in the GTRs. As I was saying earlier, the interesting thing is the RB26 actually came out years before the RB25 Neo. So out of the RB series, the RB25 Neo has the most tech in it. They also made a motor that many of us haven't even heard of, the RB30, the infamous RB30. So that was a motor that came out of the Holden Commodores. All these motors are inline 6s, some are NA, turbo, I believe only the RB26 is the twin turbo variant, but the RB30 is actually a single cam, whereas the rest of these motors are all dual overhead cam. So an interesting thing to do that really gives you a hell of a motor. RB30 is a 3 liter. Take the RB30, you can either put a RB26 head or a RB25 Neo head on it. Basically very similar to a JZ, but you get that RB sound, and they'll take a buttload of power. So that's a really cool, unique motor. I really would like to have one of those. Maybe we should get one, JMO. But yeah, RB is another great choice for sure. Depending on where you're at in the States and kind of who you have access to, or really in the world, let's say, JZ is always gonna be a little easier option to find parts and tuners for, whereas the RB, you're gonna have a little extra challenges with it. We have been lucky enough to always find someone that can help us with them and learned a lot on our own. I definitely think RB is a motor. If you wanna do something a little bit different and get a really nice sound, I think they just sound absolutely amazing. I definitely recommend any of the RBs. Before moving on, I actually did realize some of the other RB variants did come with single overhead cams as well, but you don't want those anyways. Basically, when you take the RB30 and any of these motors, you're gonna wanna have the dual overhead cam. And like I said, the Neo is basically the best head that Nissan made for these motors. Now we're gonna get a little USDM here. The old GM LS motor. We actually did a video on why you should LS swap your car. Check that one out. The LS has got to be on everyone's list. Come on, I know a lot of you guys are like haters of it because it has become such an infamous swap, but there's good reason why. They're so available, they're cheap, they come in aluminum blocks, they're lightweight. Believe it or not, NALS is not going to weigh any more than your turbo inline six, and could potentially even weigh less depending on how builds kind of turn out. So really, this is a no-brainer. They fit in like nearly anything. People have put them in anything from, you know, 240s to Skylines to Mustangs to, I believe, even like VW Beetles and crap like that. So they'll fit in anything. There's so much support for them. Basically anywhere in the US, you're gonna find someone that's gonna be able to tune it and have a basic knowledge about it. Honestly, you can't really mess these things up. That's kind of the cool part. Even if you do have a little bit of a poor tune or a poor build on them, they're just freaking workhorses. Personally, I think stock NALSs kind of sound like crap, so I am kind of there with a lot of you guys, but once you supercharge them or turbo them or do high compression, they really start to sing. And it's a really, really awesome, just booming sounding motor. So LS has got to be, I think, on everyone's list, and it's definitely near the very top of mine. We actually use a 4-liter Whipple supercharged 425 LS from CBM Motorsports in our Pro car. Basically at low boost, not even trying, it's making over 1,000 horsepower. They've taken like the 5.3 liter and some of the really small iron block truck motor variants, and they've put Chinese turbos on them and pumped them up to like mid 1000s horsepower. So if that doesn't impress you guys and show you guys that this is an absolute savage motor, then I can't help you, and you really need to go watch the Why You Should LS swap video. Next up, this might be a little bit of an oddball for some of you guys. We're not seeing a lot of these, or nearly as many of these swapped as some of the other motor variants, but the Ford 302 or Ford 50. My first drift car, I had a 50 out of a Mustang, out of an old Fox body. That's a really, if you guys are looking for something just super cheap and that you can just beat the hell out of, I would really recommend that option. You're gonna have to get a little bit custom with the swap kit and wiring, but if you're really trying to build like a drift missile or a first practice drift car, this is a great option. I mean, literally under $1,000, you can get engine, transmission, ECU, wiring harness, just give it some power and some fuel and let her rip. So they are, especially the newer ones, they are kind of wide. They're a little harder to fit in some chassis, so that's, I think, why they're not quite as common of a swap. People have proven they do fit in 240s and vehicles like that, so that's definitely another unique sounding motor. Those actually sound really great NA, as well as supercharged. Next is the Nissan SR20. So this is like probably my favorite 4-banger motor. It's a 2-liter dual overhead cam. They came in NA and turbo versions. This is a great kind of budget RB, if you will. There's also the CA18 and some other K and some interesting variants, but we're gonna stick with the SR for this one just because much more widespread. There's gonna be a lot more tuning for it available. And these motors have proven to put out a buttload of power and be really fun to drive. And they sound great too, especially when they're tuned up. And it's a small, compact, lightweight motor. I think this is really a good choice if you want to stick with kind of the JDM, but maybe don't want to ball on a JZ or RB. You're going to find a lot of people that are kind of swapping from SRs to other motors. And the nice thing is too, with SRs, they're basically going to fit in most of these Nissan chassis with factory mounts because they came in the 240s and a lot of those vehicles, and adapting them into Skylines or 350Zs, things like that, is also fairly easy and has been done. So I definitely think that's a great motor choice. You can't go wrong with the SR20. As a bonus, these were our top 5, but I wanted to put the Mazda Wankel in there just because I know a lot of you guys love that motor. I do too. I haven't personally had one. We definitely need to build a rotary car soon here. The Mazda, I mean, this is a totally unique motor. It's rotary. right? So it's got basically one piston shaped like a Dorito, flying around in circles, making a bunch of power. The reason I didn't put it in the top 5 is because this is a motor where it really requires some more specialized building and tuning. I'm not gonna flame on them about the apex seals. That's obviously been proven that you can build around that and have a completely reliable. I just wouldn't recommend it for a lot of people getting started in drifting or trying to get into competition. It's gonna require that you make a lot more partnerships with people who know how to tune and build them, and you're not gonna find parts nearly as easily as a lot of these other motor choices. But I think it deserves to be in the list of top drifting motors, so that's kind of why it's as a bonus. So if you guys like this video, please hit that subscribe button. If there's any that you think we missed, tell us why you think it deserves to be on the list and what motor you would take off the list to replace it with. We have a good amount of experience, and this is from data gathered from our experience as well as the internet and a lot of our friends and other professionals. So we really believe this is a great top 5 list, but if you think there's one that is better than one of the ones on the list, please let us know. We'd love to know why, and we're always trying to learn too. Check out our merch as well, haugenracing.com. I'm always wearing our t-shirts and merch in the videos. We'd appreciate your guys' support by hitting that subscribe button and maybe picking up a t-shirt. See you guys in a couple days.